If you've eaten at a fast food chain in Canada recently, you've probably noticed something that doesn't feel right anymore. A meal that used to cost under $10 now pushes $15. A simple combo suddenly feels like a small splurge. And if you've caught yourself wondering why fast food keeps getting more expensive, and more importantly, why those prices never seem to come back down, you're not imagining it. This isn't just inflation. This isn't just greedy pricing. And it's not something that's going to reverse anytime soon. We looked into what's actually happening behind the scenes of Canada's major fast food chains, from where their food comes from, to what it costs to run a restaurant today, to why even when costs stabilize, menu prices don't. What we found explains why fast food prices rose so quickly and why they've quietly locked in at these new levels. Fast food chains in Canada operate on extremely tight margins. For decades, their entire business model relied on low costs, massive volume, and predictability. Cheap ingredients, steady labor, and stable supply chains made it possible to sell food quickly and affordably. That system no longer exists. One of the biggest drivers of higher prices starts far before food ever reaches a restaurant, at the farm level. Farmers across Canada have faced rising costs for fuel, fertilizer, animal feed, and equipment maintenance. Modern farming is energy intensive, and when fuel and input prices rise, the cost of producing beef, chicken, dairy, wheat, and cooking oils rises with it. Even small increases at this stage ripple through the entire food system. Those higher costs don't stop at the farm. Food processors, distributors, and transport companies all face higher operating expenses as well. Refrigeration, trucking, storage, and packaging all require energy, labor, and compliance with safety regulations. When each step becomes slightly more expensive, the final product delivered to a restaurant costs more than it used to, even if nothing about the food itself looks different to the customer. Then there's labor. Fast food chains rely heavily on hourly workers, and in Canada, labor costs have gone up in a very real way. Minimum wages have increased across provinces, competition for workers has intensified, and employee turnover remains high. Restaurants now spend more on wages, training, benefits, and scheduling than they did just a few years ago. Even automated systems haven't reduced costs as much as people assume. Machines still require maintenance, software, and staff to operate them. Operating a fast food location has also become more expensive in ways customers never see. Rent for commercial spaces has risen, especially in high-traffic areas where fast food chains depend on visibility and convenience. Utility costs are higher. Packaging costs more. Waste management costs more. And regulatory compliance, from health standards to environmental rules, adds additional layers of expense. Delivery has also quietly reshaped pricing. Third-party delivery apps take a meaningful cut from every order, and while customers see a service fee, restaurants absorb part of that cost as well. Many chains have responded by raising menu prices across the board to offset delivery commissions, even for customers who order in person. Once those price increases are in place, they rarely get rolled back. Major fast food chains like McDonald's, Tim Hortons, and others didn't raise prices randomly. They adjusted pricing during a period when consumers expected inflation and were more willing to accept increases. That moment mattered. Once customers adapt to higher prices, companies have little incentive to lower them again, especially when their costs haven't returned to pre-inflation levels. There's also a psychological factor at play. When prices go up gradually and stay there, they become the new normal. Businesses track customer behavior closely, and if higher prices don't significantly reduce demand, there's no financial reason to reverse course. In many cases, fast food chains have learned that people complain but still pay. Another reason prices don't come down is long-term contracts. Large chains lock in supply agreements, leases, and labor structures based on current costs, not past ones. Even if certain inputs become cheaper temporarily, companies can't instantly restructure their entire operation. Lowering prices would risk profits without guaranteeing long-term savings. It's also important to understand that fast food is no longer positioned as the cheapest option it once was. Many chains have shifted toward branding, premium items, limited-time offers, and higher-margin products. The focus has moved from being the absolute lowest-cost option to being convenient, consistent, and familiar. That shift supports higher prices and makes rolling them back unlikely. Some people assume that if inflation slows, prices should fall. But that's not how pricing works in practice. Inflation slowing means prices rise more slowly, not that they decrease. For prices to go down meaningfully, costs would need to drop significantly and stay low. And businesses would need a strong reason to pass those savings on. In the current environment, neither condition exists. This doesn't mean fast food chains are collapsing or failing. In fact, many are still profitable. But they're operating in a new reality where higher prices are baked into the system. What customers are paying now reflects structural changes, not a temporary spike. For Canadians, this means fast food will likely remain more expensive than it used to be. Even if it feels unfair or unexpected, the era of consistently cheap fast food appears to be over, replaced by a model where convenience comes at a premium. Understanding this isn't about giving fast food chains a free pass. It's about recognizing that the forces pushing prices higher are broad, complex, and deeply embedded in how food is produced, transported, regulated, and sold today. These changes didn't happen overnight, and they aren't driven by just one factor like inflation headlines or minimum wage increases. They're the result of years of rising input costs, tighter labor markets, higher energy prices, more expensive supply chains, and corporate strategies that quietly reset pricing expectations while consumers were distracted by constant economic uncertainty. For a lot of Canadians, especially those who remember when fast food was genuinely cheap, this shift feels personal. Fast food used to be the fallback option when money was tight, time was limited, or cooking simply wasn't realistic. Now, many people are standing at a drive-thru menu wondering how a simple meal ended up costing nearly the same as a sit-down restaurant. That frustration is valid, and it's being felt across the country. But the uncomfortable truth is that complaints alone aren't enough to reverse it, because the system itself has changed. Once prices rise to cover higher operating costs, and companies learn that consumers will still pay, there's very little incentive for those prices to come back down. What this means going forward is that fast food is slowly shifting away from being a budget solution and toward being a convenience product. You're no longer just paying for the food itself, but for speed, accessibility, and consistency. For some people, that trade-off may still be worth it. For others, it's becoming harder to justify, and that decision is becoming a personal one, shaped by income, lifestyle, and how often those small price increases add up over time. If you're feeling frustrated when you look at the menu board or drive-thru screen, you're not alone. Millions of Canadians are noticing the same thing, asking the same questions, and quietly adjusting their habits because of it. Some are cutting back, some are choosing alternatives, and some are simply absorbing the cost because there aren't many convenient options left. Now you understand why this is happening, why prices feel permanently higher, and why this trend isn't likely to reverse anytime soon. This has been Maple Leaf Insider. Thanks for watching, and until next time.